Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Simmons with AIM, and this is the sixth week of the 2022 legislative session, a short session that's moving really fast. We had a great week here at AIM. We had our annual legislative dinner on Tuesday night. We welcomed our special guests, Governor Holcomb and Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch. So it was a great night, a lot of discussion, a lot of chances to talk with legislators about issues that impact cities and towns, and just continuing strengthening relationships. So thanks to everyone that journeyed to Indianapolis and made that dinner a success. Chris, I said week 6, so where does that put us in terms of the legislative process?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So like you said, week 6, so it's actually the first week of the second half, and we're off to a rather quick start. We had a number of our bills that we've been tracking being heard in committee this week, and with this second half of session, it's going to be extremely fast paced and deadlines are going to quickly be approaching us.
Yeah, and some of those deadlines are the last couple of weeks for committee hearings. So I know there's some pivotal hearings coming up this week. Jenna, we've talked in our legislative team meetings and on this video that utility issues, this seems to be a legislative session where we're dealing with a lot of utility issues. And there's a couple bills in particular that are challenging right now. Do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, both of these bills were attempting to make better and work with the bill authors on some amendments, but where they currently stand. So I'll start with Senate Bill 374. This is authored by Senator Messmer and Representative Lindauer, and the intent of this legislation is good. It's to help some regional sewer, water, solid waste districts to be able to access federal loans from the USDA. The federal government has essentially said that if a municipality can take over your customer base, they're going to be hesitant to give you those loans. So this is meant to protect those sewer, water, and regional districts to be able to access those loans. We would like to see protections for municipally owned utilities, and in particular, the 5 miles surrounding the corporate boundaries. Whereas, so if a municipally owned utility wanted to extend those services or provide service to those customers within surrounding their boundaries, that they could do that with an agreement to take over the debt. So it's not a failure to pay back the debt to the federal government. So hopefully we'll continue to work with Senator Messmer and Representative Lindauer on that piece of legislation. It is scheduled to be heard on Tuesday, and just really need clarity on that one moving forward. The other one that has drawn quite a bit of attention is House Bill 1245 from Representative Pressel. This moved out of the House and is scheduled or will be scheduled in Senate Utilities either this week or next. And this has 2 provisions in it. One deals with how connection fees are calculated. It's common practice with municipally owned utilities to do it one of 2 ways. There are 2 manuals that kind of dictate how these fees are established, and this bill would impact one of those. So you wouldn't be able to include what they're defining as contributions in aid of construction in your fees moving forward. So essentially, if a developer provided any infrastructure to you, you'd have to eliminate that or take that into account in the establishment of your fees moving forward. Or if you received a grant, you'd have to eliminate that in how you're establishing your fees. So ultimately, big picture, what this is going to do is this is going to reduce the fees you can charge on the front end and shift the burden to existing customers who are going to have to pay more in rates to make up for this new development. It really addresses that growth pays for growth argument moving forward. And another provision in this bill would allow a customer or developer to challenge those fees at the IURC level, which, to your point about lots of discussions about utilities this session, a lot of conversations about the role the IURC plays with municipally owned utilities. Obviously, the vast majority of our utilities are not regulated by the IURC. So this is another piece of legislation that kind of continues to that trend of more and more IURC oversight of our utilities, which is obviously very problematic and not something AIM would like to see continued. So we'll continue to work with Representative Pressel and Senator Cook on the definitions in that bill. The other provision that was added in House Utilities deals with sewer connections. So if a customer in a handful of counties is who this applies to, has a septic or is on septic, this extends the time by which they can stay on septic up to 20 years. So if a utility wanted to extend sewer services, this would essentially delay their ability to do that moving forward. So that's another problematic provision in the bill for some of our communities, in particular in Northwest Indiana, is where this applies to.
All right, thanks, Jenna. Chris, let's shift gears and talk about public notice for local governments. There's a bill 237, which I think we've touched on in this video in the past as part of several public access related bills, public notice related bills. But 237, there's going to be some action on that this week. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, certainly. So Senate Bill 237, that's Senator Bainline's notice requirements for local government meetings. It would require a municipality to post on their website or their social media page the notice of a meeting or that meeting's agenda. It was heard this week in the House's Government Regulatory Reform Committee on Wednesday. For the most part, the changes in this bill, they do align with our goals to modernize municipalities when it comes to posting agendas. But we are working with Chairman Miller to include a protection in the bill in case there's a technology failure that results in a failure to post a notice for one of these meetings or an agenda. So we're working with Chairman Miller to create a second reading amendment to add that protection. There are already some protections in the bill, but this is just an additional one that we really need. So we're very grateful that Chairman Miller is willing to work with us on this.
All right, so every week we've opened our video with a discussion about business personal property taxes, and we're going to flip that around and we're going to close talking about business personal property taxes this week. Matt, it's going to be a really big week next week in terms of our initiative to convince the state that any elimination of the tax must come with a suitable replacement. So what's up this week?
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. As Chris mentioned earlier, bills have switched houses now. So that means House Bill 1002 is over in the Senate. It'll be heard on Tuesday morning in the Senate Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee. So this is our next milestone event with the issue. We do expect the bill to receive a favorable hearing from our perspective, perhaps even be modified to replace revenue, or we'll have to wait to see what exactly happens, but we do expect it to take a positive turn, which is excellent. But I think it's really important to remember that the governor and the members of the House of Representatives still are committed to some form of business personal property tax reduction, specifically the 30% depreciation floor. And they're also talking about replacement revenue, which is good. So it's just going to make this last few weeks of session critical for us to stay engaged, remain engaged with your elected representatives in the State House, make sure they hear from you regularly, that yes, the business personal property tax, maybe it is an antiquated tax, maybe it does need to be revised in some fashion or form, but our revenue has to be replaced with a stable state provided resource. So that's the message we'll continue to bring. Looking forward to having our Replace Don't Erase Coalition members there with us on Tuesday in committee to sound the same message and deliver the same remarks. I hope that you'll be hearing from us on Tuesday as well. So again, things are moving positively, but we are a long way from the finish line, and keep talking to your legislators and make sure they hear from you regularly.
Right, and I'll just encourage everyone to visit aimindiana.org/BPPT. That's where you'll see we've had about 15 or so communities pass resolutions opposing any kind of elimination of the business personal property tax, partial elimination of the tax without proper sustainable replacement revenue. So check out aimindiana.org/BPPT. And if you haven't done so, we certainly encourage you to pass a resolution. There are samples on there for you to use and insert your own local examples. please do that. Please visit the tracking list at the end of your legislative summary so you can see a complete list of bills that the legislative team is working on at the State House in these last few weeks of the legislative session. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to any of us and we'll be sure to get back with you with more information. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.